it was a horrible deal, to the point that it literally, I said, if the business is going to be like this, I don't want to do music.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Musically Hitched. I'm your host, Zack Jr., and we are here today with a special guest, none other than the one and only Mr. Cedric Thompson. Cedric, thank you for joining us today.
Listen, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm honored to be here.
It's an honor to have you, man. So we're going to jump right in. We've got a lot to discuss, and there's a storied past, there's the present, and there's the future for Cedric Thompson. So let's dig right in. What would you say was your beginning to the Musically Hit story?
When I started at the age of 3.
Okay.
Started at the age of 3. My grandparents raised me. Mm-hmm. So on my father's side, which was my grandparents who raised me, that was the musically inclined side of the family.
Got it.
So again, at the age of 3, my grandmother, she would teach me because, of course, I was too young to be able to do any type of formal training. Mm-hmm. And when I became of age, at 6, I started formal training. And, starting out, even though we were always in church and, traveling and whatnot, but as it relates to the playing side, I wasn't really thinking about doing gospel or anything.
Okay.
I was a classical guy.
Right.
And my training, that's what I was doing, formal music.
Yeah.
My brother and I used to sing as a duo group.
Okay.
So there were times where our cousin played for us. Mm-hmm. There were times where he was a no-show. So I was forced to learn, the pieces that we were doing.
So you were on pace to be a vocalist. You and this older brother, younger brother?
My younger brother.
Younger brother. Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, that's where I always tell the story. God tricked me.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward roughly to 12 years old, I started playing at my church, and did my first recording at 15.
Okay.
So what I would do, I was one that always, even from 12 years old, I would go buy the LPs, and I always read credits.
Yes.
And because I always wanted to know, who was doing what.
Right.
And who captured this sound in the whole nine. And I tell you what really started, I think, my journey as it relates to me digging into my sound was, I remember one morning I was getting ready for school, and normally my routine would be I would have a radio in the restroom with me.
Okay.
I would have play the radio. I would have it on the gospel station, and this particular morning, I remember I heard the song. And the way the song started off, it was this big glitz on the piano. And it went into this huge intro.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued, and it captured my attention.
Are you ready to take your entertainment career to the next level? Contact us today at info@moreentertainment.com to schedule your personal consultation or music business coaching session.
Then as the song started, I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. Mm-hmm. Because my grandmother, she was a chapter rep for the GMWA.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So we used to go there every year. And ironically, that same year, I had heard that song. It was Nobody But Jesus. A guy named Stephen Roberts wrote it.
Okay.
And he presented it that year. But the version that I'm listening to, I'm like, I was blown away. And it was Thomas Whitfield's version that he did with Vanessa Bell.
Oh, wow.
Armstrong.
Okay.
And so from there, I say, I started identifying my sound.
Okay.
As well.
Okay.
So,
So basically, so the bug is bitten you early.
Yes.
And you're making a foray into literally creating. It's not just, okay, out of necessity, I got to learn how to play.
Exactly.
To support this artistry thing. But now it's becoming, okay, I'm stepping into my own.
Exactly.
I've got a gift. So you realized that you had a gift and you started moving with that. How important is that?
To your point, I'm going to back up just a little bit. So there was a point in time, my brother and I, we were both taking piano lessons at the same time.
Okay.
So my brother and I, at the same time as well, wanted to quit. You know,
really?
Yeah, we did. We were like, tired of all the practicing, all, you know, and so my grandmother, she let my brother quit, wouldn't let me quit.
Oh wow!
You know, and I was like, oh, and we called her Big Mama.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, Big Mama, why? And I remember she said, one day you'll see.
Man.
And she used to keep telling me that, you know, one day you'll see. I'm like, okay, what is this one day, you know?
And again, your age at this time, how were you?
At this point, I'm like 11.
Okay.
You know, so that was even right before I started playing for the church.
Mm-hmm.
So to that point, you know, she realized and saw the gift in me, you know, and as it relates to even our son, my son CJ, you know, he's we're so proud of him. He's a renowned drummer, but even beyond that, he's a great producer as well. We realized with CJ that he had a special gift,
right?
Even at the age of 3.
Okay.
You know, and you know how sometimes, you know, kids may even just kind of go through that phase where, you know, they're beating on everything.
Yeah.
You know, but we saw that the way that he was paying attention to sounds, you know, even to this day, we tell him that he owes us for a lot of pots and blinds, right. You know, because he would take pots, you know, and set them up as a certain sound, take out lampshades, those are his symbols, you know, and even the blinds, you know, so, and I was paying attention. I'm like, okay, he's paying attention to detail.
Right.
You know, so with that, you know, we saw fit, you know, to water that seed, you know, and to keep nurturing it. And the main thing, you know, that we wanted to instill into him, our thing was, you know, no matter what you do and no matter how great you get, you know, just remember, you know, it's always somebody better.
That's true.
Always.
That's always true. That's
right. You never know who it is as well. It could be your next door neighbor.
Could be.
That's looking to grab your spot.
Right.
You know, but you know, just that was our thing, to instill, you know, never get above yourself. You know, this is a gift, you know, and recognize where it comes from, render it back. But at the same time, you know, never forget, I have this gift, you know, I take it not for granted. Of course, we know that, you know, before the fall, pride comes before, you know, the fall. So, never get prideful, you know, and that's not to say not to take pride in what you do.
Right.
But not to the point that you think, you know, you arrived in the whole nine. So we instilled that into them. So that's probably, even outside of the musical gifts and the person that they are, that's the thing that I love most about, especially with CJ, is that, you know, he doesn't let it go to his head. Very good.
Very good. So did you have a producer mentor?
So at the time, all of the records that I gravitated to seemed to be produced by Quincy Jones.
Of course.
So you know, just paying attention to all of his detail. You know, I guess you can say more so, you know, was a mentor from, you know, studying.
Right.
There was a gentleman, Leonard Johnson, in Anderson, South Carolina.
Okay.
You know, he would take time out, you know, at times, you know, to show me different things. He had this particular style of playing that that just kind of the melodies that just flowed with each other, and he had a way of singing in his playing.
Nice,
that I had never heard before. So I think that, and then along with listening at Thomas Whitfield, and I gravitated to Oscar Peterson as well.
Oh yeah.
And then to find out that Thomas listened to Oscar Peterson at the same time. So I think it was an easy marriage.
Yeah.
Right.
There.
So the one thing that I learned to do though was to identify my sound within being inspired by them.
Right. Right.
So not necessarily wanting to necessarily sound like them. So I was trying to figure out how to incorporate what they did into who I am.
Right. How important is that? That was going to be one of my next questions for you, is how you crafted your sound, but how important is it for producers and just creatives in general to craft their uniqueness?
It's very important. I always have this saying, anytime I get a chance to speak or whatnot, I always say that you never want to be a counterfeit.
Right.
And I think, I can attest to myself. I think that's probably one of the reasons why I've been able to still work, because I vowed to stay true to who I am. Stay true to my sound. And, and when I say that, that doesn't mean that, because at the same time, while we're in the industry, we understand it's a business, so
Very
you have
true.
to be competitive.
Yep.
So it doesn't say that you doesn't still remain relevant into the sound of what's happening. But at the same time, don't necessarily lose yourself trying to sound like someone else.
Right.
Because they are already the best copy of themselves.
Right.
So in that, stay true to who you are, and identify your sound. And I think with that, because if not, I think one of the important things to gather from that is you'll never be able to locate where your foundation is. So each time a sound is changing, then you'll find yourself lost because you don't know who you are.
Wow.
And you haven't been able to identify your sound. So I think that's important, and so a lot of the things that I do, people say that they can identify who it is. And one of the great testament to that is I want people to be able to identify my sound, but at the same time, I want to still be able to evolve into times that you don't even know it's my production.
Right.
Right. So I think at that moment, once you're able to find that foundation, that chemistry of identifying your sound and still be relevant at the same time, will cause you, to still be able to get the calls.
Yeah. So part of it, for those listening, it is about sounds. Like you do need to kind of identify something that you are willing to marry, let's say, to become hits to, right?
Most definitely.
Sonically.
Exactly.
There's a sound. Dr. Dre has a sound.
He does.
There's just certain things that when it hits, and you know who it is.
And you know it is, yeah.
Before seeing the credits, or
there you go.
So I think that's what we're getting at, is that there is knowing yourself musically,
right?
What to do and what to stay away from.
Exactly.
Stay in your lane. Lots of ways to say it, but then there's also some sonic textures, samples, programs, whatever, that you just need to. We were talking about Pro Tools earlier,
right?
How we both decided to marry that one, right?
Most definitely.
Because there's multiple softwares, but you need to niche down in something. So when people need a specialist, they know to call you.
Most definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Generalists are easy to find, right? Specialists are hard to get on the phone.
True to the point.
Because they're working, right?
Because they're working.
Yeah. So,
true to the point.
Absolutely. So we've kind of gone through the high school years. College was music. Like, is music now in the driver's seat? Or you still kind of fighting? Did you bought into the idea of, okay, I'm a pianist, I can play the keys.
Yes.
So when did you know, okay, I'm about to make a career out of this thing?
I knew that it would be a career because I was like, I guess you could say, the one or one of the ones that was getting the call.
Right.
At an early age.
Okay.
So back then, especially with gospel artists doing a lot of workshops, you had a lot of gospel artists back then that would travel doing workshops, and a lot of them didn't travel with musicians. So when they would come to the area or whatnot, I was the one that was actually getting the call, to play for these different artists.
Okay.
So I knew then, and after doing that, my first session,
okay,
I graduated. I was 17 from high school. Moved here to Charlotte to go to school, Johnson C. Smith.
Okay.
And I started playing with the gospel choir there, and our rehearsals was on a Thursday night. So I remember out there, this one particular rehearsal, me and a friend of mine, we were going down the street to grab something to eat. On our way, we could hear this music. I'm like, man, this guy, whoever this guy is rehearsing with this choir, loves himself some John P. Key, because he sounds like John P. Key, man. And I said, let's go in here right quick, because they were rehearsing with the doors open of the church. So we walked in and, just stood in the vestibule area. He noticed me, called me up to the front, to play for the rest of that rehearsal.
Okay.
And from there, I started playing. I started playing with him. He called me. I think it was 2 weeks later. He had to go to Houston. Called me to go with him, and from there, I started playing with him.
Nice.
And that's where I met my wife, LeJune,
right,
as well.
Okay.
So it just kind of catapulted from there.
Yeah. So you've done a lot even at this point. And obviously at some point along this, because you talked about earlier, this is a business. At some point you started getting paid for music. So when would you say those years began? When did you start getting compensated for your music? Because that's another confidence booster when you start monetizing.
It is. And I actually started getting paid when I was 13.
Okay. At
my church.
All right.
And I give credit to my grandfather with that, because my grandfather was like, now you all not going to use my grandson every Sunday and not give him any money.
Right.
So I was getting roughly like $50, a Sunday, but a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And so what I would do, I would take some of that save and I would head straight to the music store, buy those albums.
Yeah.
So I started getting compensated at 13, and then professionally, once I started with John B. Key, that confirmed. Prior to that, I knew I wanted to have a career out of that, but then, as I was serving as his music director, that was the confirmation. As it relates to my career and confirming that this is what I'm going to be doing as it relates to my career, and knowing that I'm operating in the right area.
Right. So as you consider the music landscape now, you have a massive body of work.
Okay.
And you've worked with legends such as John P. Key. Too many other artists probably to name in this episode, right? But names that most would recognize, particularly in the realm of gospel music. Did you venture outside of gospel? I know a lot of people get their start in church. We've had several guests that said that that's a common thread amongst people that particularly grew up in the southeastern United States. But not everybody has that background. But did you ever consider, or have you worked outside of gospel as well? And if so, how did that influence the records and things that you produced as you?
I have. So I think my my greatest influence was classical.
Okay.
Because I think I was telling you earlier, when I started out, I wasn't even thinking gospel.
Right.
I was a classical guy.
Right.
So, playing classicals, doing all of those recitals, the whole nine, that had a big influence on me, and especially being able to read.
Right.
Especially playing for my church, because you had to be able to read hymns.
Okay.
And I mean, don't add any incidentals or anything. You had to play it straight out of that book.
From the book, right.
So that, and then I would do some jazz with the jazz band in high school.
Okay.
So I understood, being able to not just identify, but approach different genres with that. So I had the opportunity to travel with Stephanie Mills. So I worked with her for about 3 years or so.
Okay.
Traveled with her, and a project that I won a Grammy for. I worked with several artists outside of gospel.
Okay.
Queen Latifah, Michael McDonald, Mavis Staples, Patty Griffin, just name a few.
Right.
So yes, I've had experiences outside of doing gospel.
And tell us how did that particular, because that's the Grammy win, that's a big one, right? So how did that particular opportunity come about? You established at that point, obviously, but what made that call come about for you?
So I was working closely with a label, EMI. They were EMI at the time,
right?
And so the president of the label at the time, Ken Pennell, he called me, and there was a management company by the name of Vector Management.
Okay.
They had a array of A-list artists, and they had an idea to do a project with some of their artists, and the idea was for them to do inspirational music, and to also team each one of those artists with quote unquote a well-known either choir or singers behind them.
Okay.
So that's how I got the call to actually do that particular project.
Nice.
I didn't show it, but a lot of times I'm working in fan mode on that project.
Right.
I was a fan working on that project. Yeah.
How do you balance that when you meet someone that you respect, but it's your time as well? Because that's what we work hard, we grind, we put the time in, and then all of a sudden it pays off.
Right.
After all these years of working, right? And then you meet someone whom you've admired from afar. Mm-hmm. How do you turn it off and on in those moments?
I just always, in those moments, always kept the mindset that I got the call to be the producer. And then plus, I was taught, to make sure that you stay in your lane and stay out the way. So from learning that years prior, that prepared me to be able to work with people that I admired.
Right.
Right. So I knew that, okay, while these are people that I look up to, and that I admire, I have to realize at the same time that I'm here to do a business.
Right.
So thankfully, I was able to be able to differentiate that, the two of those, lay the fan side, lay the fan part aside. On breaks, I would go back in the fan mode a little bit,
Keeping it real, right?
Yeah. But when it's time to go back to that red button, I'm your producer.
Because an artist needs to see you like that too, because they may have worked with a who's who
right.
as well. And even if it's your first time, you got to show up in that moment and be who they need you to be. Because
exactly.
Even an established artist, that's a very vulnerable place for them to be.
Most definitely.
In the studio, we're sitting in one now, and it's just like, a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors.
Right.
come out. That's a part of the process, right?
It is.
We talked about on a previous episode the lab and why people call it the lab, and scientists do experiments
exactly
in the lab, so it's okay to mess up and not get it right. But even these legends have to know that they can trust you with their flaws, and that humanizes them, right, in your eyes, I'm sure, right?
It does, and you to your point, the main statement in that is being able to trust you. I think that's one of the things, first of all, that you have to, that's one of the blankets that you have to kind of be able to peel, and be able to get through, because like you said, some of them kind of knew of some of my work, and a lot of them didn't.
Okay.
So you have to be able to establish that trust going in.
Right.
And then they have to trust you, because again, we're talking about artists that have decades of catalog, decades of hits,
millions of albums sold,
and the whole nine, so they have to trust, that you're going to be able to handle their gift with integrity,
right? Right. To deliver. So let's talk a little music business, something well, and a lot of people, want to achieve what you've achieved. But you mentioned earlier, this is not just fun and games.
It's not.
This you have supported an entire family,
right, from
your gift of music.
I have,
and so we like to keep it real on Musically-ish. We like to kind of dig into the details,
most definitely,
that maybe it's just easy to gloss over. So you've produced in different eras, right? We're now in the digital age, and that's cooking alive and well.
Exactly.
But some things haven't changed. So talk to our listeners about what producer points are, because sometimes when you drop terms like that, not everybody knows, right?
Right.
Producer fees, and there's things like producer agreements and production deals, all of this language that producers need to understand. So how did you go about negotiating? Did you just have to take what you got, or at a certain point did you say, I want X, Y, and Z in terms of points on a record? Can you clarify that?
Sure. So of course, starting out, there were those moments where I was taken advantage of, and just more so because I was green. I was green to the business, I'm thinking, I was just more excited just to be able to do the work, and neglected the business aspect of it. And the event that actually made me want to actually start digging into the business side of it was, I had this group called The Promise, and we signed a recording contract with Word Records. Prior to that, we were signed to a production deal, and the production deal, I later found out, was a bad deal that we signed. And this was my first major project into the business or in the industry.
Can we talk about production deal too? Like,
sure.
What is a production deal?
So a production deal is, say for instance, I'm a producer or a production company, and I signed a deal with a label, and in that deal, I may have to turn in to them 3 different artists or so. Okay. So with that deal, they work out a deal with me, which is in that deal a distribution deal or so as well. So in return, then, what I do as the production company that has the deal with the label, I then go find artists.
Okay.
Sign artists to me, which I turn in those masters and recordings or records to the record label that I have the deal with.
Right.
So that particular artist in return is actually signed to a production deal because they're signed to me versus being exclusively to the label.
Right. But your deal is actually exclusive with the label.
My deal is exclusive with the record label.
Right. So kind of like some people may say a middleman.
The middleman pretty much is what that is.
Okay.
So like I said, so it was a horrible deal. To the point that it literally, I said, if the business is going to be like this, I don't want to do music.
One of those deals. Okay.
It was one of those deals.
Okay.
It really was. So after swimming in that emotion for a minute, I decided. I said, you know what? No, because I realized that to an extent, most of this was also my fault because I didn't know. Didn't
know the business.
I didn't know the business.
Right. Okay.
So in return, what I did, I started studying, asking.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of situations that I've seen that didn't necessarily work out for either producers or artists was more so merely just because they didn't understand the business.
Wow.
So and as it relates to your question with the producer points, so a point is basically like 1% or so. So
the 1.1%.
The right.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So what you would need to do is to understand the ratio of your points or the royalty to that particular deal or agreement. So say that if I'm getting 5 to 7 points or so, then that's the producer royalties to that particular agreement. And as a producer, the way that I would negotiate my agreements is that I would negotiate. So they give you in advance. You get an advance on it, or whatever the all in is. It could be all in, or advance on up against the record. So what I learned to do, and what I would advise even to producers, is to construct your deal to where you start recouping from the recoupment of your production budget, not necessarily the the budget of the album. Okay. Which means, so I'm just gonna give off a random number. Say if they gave you $30,000 or so, then at $30,001 is when you start recouping. Right. Versus say that the album, and I'm throwing out numbers because we don't get these numbers these days, but just say not anymore. But just say that the budget for the record was 75. Where you want again your royalty to start recouping at 30,001 versus 75, because 75 could actually be 125 by the time they're finished paying with for the record, because the label has to pay for promotion on the record, all of the deals that are included in that. Right. So it's important to be able to get in and understand the business, and don't be afraid to handle the business. Right. Whatever your agreements are, and I always say, you get what you negotiate. And at the same time, that doesn't say that, you're a producer just starting out and you asking for the moon.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you, the balance right there. Can a new producer who's fresh on the scene, gospel music, for example, or pop, R&B, no matter the genre, can they go in asking for what a Cedric Thompson can ask for at this stage?
In order for you to get to that point, there's some work that you have to put in.
Right.
You know,
right.
you have to build that resume, you know, in order to, you know, to be able to go in and then start demanding.
Right. Yeah. So if a producer walked in this room right now and said, hey, I want to be like you, but in today's music industry, what's the first thing you would tell them they got to do?
First thing I would tell them, first of all, learn your business. You know, as I just stated, you know, learn your craft, and at the same time, you know, learn first of all, figure out if this is what you want to do.
Right.
You know, I'm kind of back up a little bit, you know, because another thing that I've seen that has been, if you will, the demise of some producers is that they don't know how to leave their ego at the door. You know, so I mean that's the first thing. You know, you have to be a people's person. You know, and I always say, you know, you have to learn how to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, you know, a doctor sometimes,
right.
You know, I'm you know, not literally, but you know, so with that, you know, I would say first of all, you know, outside of that, understand, you know, understand your lane, you know, and where your strengths are. Know that, you know, and know what it is that, number one, that you have to represent. So if there's a particular artist that calls you in a particular genre, then know if that's not your area, you know, or if you're not strengthened in that particular area, know how to either accomplish, you know, that particular product. Because the one thing I would say, number one, as a producer doesn't mean that you have to know how to play instruments.
Facts.
You know.
Right.
So a producer is basically, you know, a supervisor, if you will.
Right. Right.
You know, and so in that, you know how to be crafty, if you will. You know, be one, you know, that has tough skin, because this music industry, I mean, it can pull you apart. You know, so in that, you know, even so I'm speaking of the things even before we even get to production. Yeah. You know and know how to use good time management. You know, be of a person that is integral with finances. You know, because you're not just dealing with your funds, you know, right. Your money, you know, this is the artist's money, you know, or the label, you know, that they worked hard for, right. As well. You know, so
I can't just go and buy a G-Wagon just because I got a big advance.
No, sir. No, sir. Don't do that, you know, because the one thing that you have to, and I had to learn this the hard way as well, you know, because it was at one point in time, you know, I was afforded and had the opportunities, you know, to be working back to back. I had projects, you know, lined up. So I wasn't saving accordingly.
Okay.
You know, and so I had to learn, okay, you know, when that rainy day came,
yes,
you know, yes. I'm looking at, all right, I'm looking at this account, and you know, it didn't add up to the stuff that I saw coming through, you know, because I had the mindset this is always going to be coming in.
Right. And that's a very good point, because everybody's approach to budgeting is not the same.
Exactly.
Right? And that seems to be a taboo word. Sometimes we talk about music, you know, there's a music budget that a producer gets, a producer's budget. Exactly. So you have to be able to manage other people's money. You do. But you're talking about right now, after all is said and done, you got to be able to manage your own, right?
You have to be able to manage your own. That's right.
Is there a recommended formula for, let's call it a percentage, that if you could do it over again, going back to let's say the first time you got a producer's check, how much would you have saved from that check, looking back in retrospect now, versus how much you spent?
Looking back, I probably would have saved 60, 70.
Okay.
You know, I probably would have saved that, you know, and saved that, and then doing some smart investing,
right,
as well.
So you have on this side of it, you have the anticipation that you know it's not going to last. So to the young buck who's coming up now, you would say, okay, you hot right now,
yeah,
but you may or may not get that call for every artist. So, and
not only that though, especially in today's world, you know, budgets are not big anyway.
Right.
You know, so the smart way to do it is try to get, you know, what you get, you know, on the front end of it, because it's at the same time, you know, make sure, you know, that you're handling the business where you are putting yourself, you know, to be able to receive residuals as it relates to royalties. But it's not guaranteed that you're going to receive X amount of dollars from royalties, mm-hmm. especially with the streaming services, you know, and with the way that those are computed in the whole nine. Right. You know, you're not making a lot from that, if any, really. Right. So the way I look at that is I look at that now as it relates to music is being really a form of advertisement. Mm. You know, so which makes it a little more difficult for us sometimes as producers, because if you're a producer that's not an artist, you know, then the question is, okay, well, how do I do that? You know, so then, you know, then you have to look at the other side of the business, like sync licensing.
Yes.
You know, and which is one of the things and one of the reasons why I stress the importance of ownership.
Talk about it.
You know, and you know, ownership of not just your masters, but you know, your publishing, mm-hmm. In the whole nine. You know, so that you'll be able to put yourself, or at least have opportunities where you can put yourself to be able to license your music out. Right. You know, all the whole nine. And because if you don't have an ownership of that, you know, you're not in the position to be able to do so.
Right. And just to clarify as well to those listening, you know, some people may know this already. Obviously, we got a lot of music business pros that listen to the show, but mm-hmm. everybody owns their publishing to start. You actually have to sell it or give it away.
You do. That's so right.
What you're saying is that people in the times that we live in now, mm-hmm. be very slow. Yeah, to give it away, because there's so many different mediums now and distribution outlets for music mm-hmm. that can be monetized. Exactly. And with streaming as an example. That's right. The payout is very, very minuscule, almost non-existent.
It really is.
So there are other avenues and venues that if you're resourceful, mm-hmm. your music is still dope. It's great. It is, right? Yeah. But maybe this label route, maybe this artist route is not the way you need to go. You might need to be monetizing over here, film, TV, content creation, there you social media, etc. Some of these things that are just like plentiful.
There you are.
There's music now. You go on Instagram, you know, you get this. It's not always recognizable names. Right. There's some instrumentals in there that I find sometimes that I'm putting behind the story. Yeah. And it's pretty sweet. But is. I don't recognize the name.
You don't know the name. Exactly.
Somebody's getting a check for that, right?
They are. You know, and they're drawing those residuals, mm-hmm. you know, and that passive income or whatnot, you know, and you know, so that's the type of residual, especially today, that you need to be looking at, right? You know, because like you said, you know, and especially being on the side of it, you know, you may not necessarily be getting the calls, you know, every day, you know, to work on a project or so, mm-hmm. you know, so you have to look at those avenues, you know, and then even with that, you know, like I said, you know, be mindful, you know, that, hey, you know, I need to also be saving, right? You know, not just for the sake of having a rainy day, but, you know, you need to be saving for your family, you know, and even as the Bible says, you know, you need to be putting away for your children's children.
Wow. You know? Wow. That's a level of responsibility. So you can't. So in essence, you're telling the people that we need to be looking at each dollar and giving each one of those pennies in that dollar an assignment.
That's right.
because one of these days, we're all getting older every day, right? Every day we live, we get older. But you don't know in this business. You don't always know when the tour is going to end.
You don't.
The record's going to be up, or when the label's going.
And COVID taught us a lesson with that during the pandemic era, having the time to really focus on their music versus being on the road.
Right.
So those that are on this side of the seat or the table, if you will, we were able to take the opportunities, to be able to get those calls.
Yeah.
But that again had to. I was only afforded that opportunity because of the work that I was able to establish.
Yeah, you've earned the right to get those calls.
Yes.
And you're also set up. So you have your own home studio.
Yes.
I'm assuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you had your own setup at home?
So I have to give a story behind that. So I was during this time, I would say this was roughly around 2010, 12 or so. I was traveling a lot as well. So I was on tour, had done this tour, Sisters in the Spirit tour.
Okay.
I was coming in from tour, getting ready to go work on Bishop T.D. Jakes and Potter's House record.
Okay.
So I was coming in, had enough time to get some sleep, wash clothes, and I went on my way to the airport. My wife dropping me off to the airport. I went in to see the kids, and my youngest son, he said, "Dad, what are you doing here?" I said, "What you mean?" He said, "I didn't think you lived here anymore."
Oh, wow.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Oh, wow.
And from that moment, I said, "Yes, something has to change."
Yeah. So, you remember how old your son was at that time?
Chandler was 10 years old.
Single digits, so it's pretty small.
Right. So that's when I made the decision, to put to build a home studio.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, it's been advantageous for me.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed every moment of it.
What are some of the advantages that you can roll off right now?
So some of the advantages of that, number one is, of course, unlimited time,
mm-hmm.
That you have. Sometimes, that can be a curse too, because you have the unlimited time. You spend unlimited time on the music. Sometimes you don't know when to stop. You cut it off.
Right. Time management again. Right?
Time management.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage to that. Budget wise, you don't necessarily have a overhead cost.
Right.
So there are several.
Right. So you can pocket that producer's fee, for example, or advance. You can keep that in essence.
You can keep that versus being able to having to go out, rent a location or so. Mm-hmm. Unless it calls for particular sound or a particular avenue that you're not necessarily able to grab at your spot. Right. Say for instance, if you have something that requires a big choir or something of the sort, and if your space doesn't allow for that, then of course you have to go and then resource out.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, but also there's correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a tax advantage as well, right? Because it's like home office,
write it
studio.
off. Yes, sir.
So you can write that off. So it's not just the monies that are coming in.
Exactly.
It's the monies that you get to keep.
The tax benefits from it. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
So lots of that, and then you also get to curate an environment that is
exactly.
uniquely yours,
mm-hmm.
and you can set it up like you said, and you roll out of bed and go to work, and
At any time.
Yeah. So when the ideas hit, you don't have to, hold them or put them in the digital recorder.
That's right.
Just go downstairs to the basement or out to wherever your studio is. And
most definitely. Most definitely. But that electricity bill go up though.
There's trade-offs, right?
There's trade-offs, yes, sir.
There's some downsides, right? Yeah. I think that's important to know because a lot of people, some people, they're on the fence about investing in themselves.
Right.
So what have you gained from investing in yourself? Because that's a easy thing to say, invest in yourself, but you've got to spend money. Lots of it
to make money.
Yeah, exactly.
And number one, being able to recognize what's incoming and outgoing. That's the one thing that I can say that I've gained from that, and being able to be in a position, to recognize smart decisions, as it relates to your financial goals, your financial status. The whole nine, and I've been investing into certain things like coffee, so and actually, what drove me to those decisions as well was because of me being able to own my own studio. Okay. And because of that, I understood the importance of ownership again.
Mm-hmm. It's a mentality.
It's a mentality. Mm-hmm. So with that, that drove me to a whole nother model business wise.
So there are some structures that are advisable to at least consider for those that have nowhere to start, because some people have not, they just a sole proprietor, hadn't even thought about it maybe until this episode. Maybe I need to create a company structure so that
I'm gonna tell you
advantages I can reap.
I learned that the hard way.
Okay.
Because I was working on this one particular year, I was working on a project, and at that time I was set up as a sole proprietor. About 2 or 3 years later, I got a knock on the door. The IRS came knocking.
A literal knock on the door.
Literally.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they wanted to see my reports and books and stuff.
That's an audit.
Oh, it was an audit.
Okay.
And what happened was, so even though I had set up a DBA, it was still going up against me personally.
Correct. Right.
So in doing my taxes, I was doing them as the DBA, which was reported, but they occasionally, this particular label had written out some of the back end to me, and I was reporting it as the DBA as well, but it was all still, it was nothing was incorporated. It was all personal.
Right.
So I learned that the hard way.
Right.
Thank God I had all of my documents, in the whole nine, to be able to prove, but that was a learning a lesson at that point.
Right.
So from there, that's when I started setting up, those different structures.
Right. So you would encourage our listeners to do their research as to how to get that extra layer of protection.
Exactly.
So it's not coming at you.
Exactly.
Literally, not somebody
knocking
on
at
the
that door. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. Your role in relationship to performing rights organizations. Talk to us about that. How has that benefited you? And maybe you can expound on what it is, of course, but how has that been advantageous to you as a producer?
I'm an advocate for some type of ownership. And with that, then that means that you'll be able to have some ownership of the publishing, ownership of the mechanicals, and with that, then, comes the involvement of the a performance right organization, those PROs, either BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, and then you have the foreigns as well. And it's important, if you're going to become a songwriter, even a producer as well, to set yourself up with one of those organizations, as a songwriter and even as a publisher. Because what what a lot of people don't understand is that even as a publisher, you don't have to be a songwriter.
True.
You know, a publisher's job basically is to get your songs placed.
Right.
You know, and on that, you know, they keep up the admin for it and the whole nine. But you could be a publisher and I mean could be nowhere close to a songwriter.
Right. Right.
You know, so with that, you know, it's very advantageous, you know, for you to try to have some type of ownership, you know. So once you sign up, again, sign up with I'm with BMI.
Okay.
And you know they'll report to you, you know, quality statements or residuals, you know, and even if now there's sometimes you may get something that you didn't get necessarily get paid from, or, you know, or you will see a statement on, you know, until it equivalent to a certain dollar.
So it has to reach a certain threshold.
It has to reach a certain threshold before you start getting a payout.
Right.
But so set yourself up with that because you don't necessarily see it now doesn't mean that, you know, it's not going to pop out years to come. Because thankfully, because of that, and because, you know, I set myself up, you know, as a publisher and a songwriter with a BMI, you know, I'm able to receive royalty checks from years ago, you know, and then sometimes surprisingly, you know, I've been surprised to realize a song came to life, you know, that was done away with years ago. Yeah.
Right.
You look and you look on the printout, you know, it's a ringtone, you know, so you never know what becomes of it, you know. So
no. So have you actually had publishing deals over the years? Did you decide to always represent yourself when it came to your publishing? What's your experience with that?
I had a publishing deal, and I was glad I got out of it though. You know.
Why?
Well, because I realized that in that particular deal, I gave up more than I owed. Okay. Than I should have. You know, but it taught me the insides and outs, you know, as well of understanding the publishing. Right. You know, and it gave me opportunities it did give me opportunities, you know, to be able to work with other artists as well, you know, because of the publishing deal. So at the same time, it still was a blessing, you know, but it afforded me, you know, to be able to, and again, that goes back to having a mindset, right? You know,
so you may correct me if I'm wrong. You may be saying it might be wise to leverage a deal depending on where you are in your career,
exactly,
so that you can get in the door. A publishing deal could open doors of access to certain artists, certain labels, certain companies.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure if your deal was this way, but when you said you didn't get what you should have gotten? Was it that you got an advance and they gave you a lower percentage, or was it just a percentage thing and you just weren't happy with the percentage? You didn't think it was equitable?
I wasn't necessarily happy with the well, let me say this. I didn't understand the timing of the duration of the deal. Okay. So which meant that what I thought I should have been receiving after a certain period of time, because I didn't understand, you know, the whole construction of the deal.
Back to the business again, right?
Back to the business again, you know. So again, you know, I don't speak against, you know, not doing a publishing deal, but just make sure, you know, you understand all of the fine print.
Right, but you are an advocate for maintaining as much of your publishing as possible.
Most
if you can keep it all, great. But in some scenarios, now give a little to get a lot.
There's some scenarios, you know, where of course you have to split, you know, if you're a co-writer, you know, but then there are some scenarios where I was the sole writer, but was willing to split because I knew the advantages of it being on a particular project.
Yes. Right.
You know.
Right.
So you know, but there again, you know, those are the decisions that you have to, you know, weigh out.
Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on? I know you know it's hard to pick one. I know you've done many, but was there any particular experience that you had that just stands out to you, where you felt like I was in my zone on this one?
Sometimes I say all of them are my favorites, but there are certain ones, you know, that just have a certain sentimental value to it. One is a Michael Stampley. Mm-hmm. And reason being was because that particular project challenged me. And
how so?
Because I produced his first project, and him being a new artist. When he had first hit the scene, he sounded so much like Donnie McClurkin. So even to the fact that he had already had a single out, Holiness. And I remember even hearing the singer on the radio, and for the longest I thought Donnie McClurkin had a new single until I heard them, announce the name, the artist. And I was like, okay, this is a new artist. And right after that, you know, I got the call to produce his project. So the challenge in that was to help him find his own lane, you know, because he was being compared to Donnie McClurkin, you know. So I didn't want to be the one to set him up, you know, as another Donnie McClurkin clone.
I got you.
And that particular project was a successful project, and actually he broke records as a new artist on charts.
Wow.
In gospel, with that project. So that was one that has very sentimental value. Another favorite project of mine was a project that Donald Lawrence and I produced, Finally Karen.
Okay.
And that number one, you know, that's one of those projects again. I'm in fan mode. You know, because I grew up a cluster fan.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Right?
Exactly. But it was, that project was so easy, you know, because Donald and I, you know, we grew up listening to most of the same music.
Okay.
You know, Donald, he came from the school of, if you will, the Hawkins, the Clarks, Whitfield, Andre Crouch. Those same people were the same people that I loved and listened to as well. Mm-hmm. So working on that particular project, you know, it was easy. You know, number one, Donald and I already had a good chemistry. As a production team,
right?
And then you know, the fact of working on Karen's project, and it was a great project. So that was one of my favorite projects as well. The project I produced for Bishop T.D. Jakes and the Potter's House was their last project, live in Kenya. And that project was humbling because when we went to Kenya, this goes to show you that you never know in your process, you know, what you're presenting, you never know who is affected.
Right.
You know, or who it may be inspiring. And when we got to Kenya, I had an humbling experience. A lot of the locals there, they wanted to sit in the rehearsals, and so I let them sit in the rehearsals. And I remember on one of the rehearsals during the break, a lot of the musicians there, you know, came to me and told me that they listened to me for years.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, that was
in Kenya.
In Kenya. Yeah. And I was so humbled by that. You know, so, you know, just name a few. And then, you know, of course, you know, a lot of the things that Donald and I worked on as well. And I do have to name this one particular project, just because I didn't see it coming. Outside of the Happy Day project that I named, with Michael McDonald and all of them, was a project that I worked with artist by the name of Rodney Bryant, and he had. I was 3 days away from mixing the record. I was going to Chicago because I wanted to work with an engineer there at the studio, The Hinge, and I wanted to mix the project. So Rodney calls me. Again, it's 3 days away from me leaving. So he calls me and says, "Hey Cedric, I got the song I want you to hear." And I said, Rodney, first of all, we don't have any time. I'm getting ready to leave in 3 days. And he said, "Yeah, but I really want you to hear this song." So I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to persuade him. There's no time to do that
right now. Yeah, right.
So he was like, he kept calling me, and so I was like, okay, Rodney, send me the song. Now note, this is the internet wasn't really that strong then. So this was still the days of FedExing.
Oh wow, okay.
So
physical,
which means really I got 2 days.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So
overnighting it, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he overnighted to me. It was on a cassette, and I popped it in, and it was this older lady. She sounded like she was in the kitchen singing,
Really?
And I listened to the project. I mean, not the project. I listened to it, and I called Rodney back. I said, "Rodney, no way we can do this." And first of all, the song was about, she was singing a personal testimony because she had cancer. So it was about her personal testimony. And Rodney was like, "You don't think you can do anything with the song?" I said, "No," and he kept calling. So I was like, "Okay, Rodney." I said, "Okay, well, here's what we'll do." I said, "The only way we can do this song is if you guys, I'll construct the song, but you guys will have to meet me in Chicago on the first day of that we start mixing before they set up the mix." So I constructed it, and I said, "Okay, well, what I need you to do is to get maybe 3 people that's in your choir, with a great testimony, have them write their testimony. I'll construct it for them. I'll write a verse as well, and when we get there, we'll work it out."
Okay.
And that song became the single on the record. Really? I was suggesting to the label another song that was called "Great Things." We had did this revision of "Great Things" from Milton Brunson and Thompson Community Choir, and because it was a big groovy song, I thought that it should have been a single, and they picked that's the song I didn't like. As a single, became one of his biggest hits.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow. So you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
So put your best foot forward on every song.
On everything, because you never know.
The one that hits could be the one that you think
exactly.
Will not. Yeah.
And with that, I would also like to state, if I can, as a producer, concentrate on getting the best song that you can.
Yes.
Not necessarily with the mindset of producing a hit. Because most of the time when you go into the mindset of producing a hit, you come up with something contrived. And
is that where that's where the duplication comes in, right? Because what we tend to gravitate toward, what has been confirmed,
is what you hear. Yeah.
Right.
Already done. So let the song speak to you, and let the song dictate to you what elements should be involved.
That's
or
good.
How to produce it.
Right.
And it'll be what it is.
Let the song do the talking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay.
Most definitely.
You mentioned the legendary Donald Lawrence, longtime collaborator of yours.
Yes,
you guys
yes.
made a lot of magic together.
Most definitely.
What type of? He's a very gifted human being.
Oh, most definitely.
What type of person do you have to be his collaborator?
You know, with working with Donald, first of all, you know, your expectation, you know, is going to be that of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have to be that type of person, you know, that strives for that, you know, and at the same time, though, in a way that doesn't, you know how sometimes you can hear producers and there's too much in the music.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to be a person, as I said earlier, leaving your ego at the door. Because Donald, he'll strip your music down to the bare minimum, you know, and I understood that because, number one, you know, Quincy Jones, I saw made a statement. I think he was listening at, I think either some mixes or so on a record or production that they were doing, and he was saying, leave some space. You got to leave room for God to be able to come in to the music.
Yeah,
so,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
So same thing with Donald. You know, he wants you to. Now Donald still likes stuff to be edgy, but edgy with heart.
Right.
You know, so with that, you know, of course you got to be a person of integrity, you know, and be about your business at the same time. But understanding that, you know, when you're working with Donald, is just not necessarily, even though Donald is a technical person as well, I mean, as it relates to the way he approaches things, you know, but you definitely have to place yourself to be able to think outside the box, you know, and be open, you know, to that, because at the same time, you also have to realize that, hey, you know, even though this may be a product that I'm also representing and demonstrating to actually put out, but this is not necessarily your project as it relates to the vision. You're helping someone else's vision to come to the forefront.
Right.
So with Donald, you know, those are the mindsets that you have to be in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How important has relationships? That's one example of a great relationship that you've fostered and developed
most definitely
over the years. How important has relationship building and maintaining been to your success?
Very, very important. You know, because number one, you know, we were speaking on something earlier before we started, and I mentioned, you know, you never take for granted those first chance encounters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and never take for granted where or what a relationship can form into.
Right.
You know, so forming great relationships, you know, I think is very vital. You know, because again, you know, I never would have known that, you know, me having a great relationship with Donald, you know, would also help elevate my career.
Right.
You know, right. And I know a large portion of my career was also because of my connection with Donald.
Right.
You know, but that was because as well we remained and kept a great relationship with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I understood the importance of the relationship, you know, and understand, you know, the connection.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
did you guys agree on everything?
No, we didn't. I mean, there were times in the studio. I hear now Donald, he likes to mix a little more of sopranos, but I was always a soprano guy.
Okay.
And Donald's the alto guy.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to fight for those sometimes, and I would disagree. You know, and then even musically, sometimes, you know, he wanted to go into a particular area, and I was like, no. So
Yeah.
there were only a few occasions I won the battle, you know, and but there again, you know, realizing, okay, I'm here to support a vision.
There you go. Right.
You know,
right.
so regardless, you know, of what I thought should happen, you know, that's not my job.
Right.
You know, of course, you know, it's my position to make suggestions or recommendations or whatnot.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, again, you know, it's either the person that you're working with, you know, or the artist or whatnot, it's their vision.
Right. Right. And that also comes down to trusting that artist's gift as well. Because like we said, Donald Lawrence is a legend. Right?
Most definitely.
So you, at some point, even though you need to have some gusto and say, hey, here's what I think, because that's also your job too. Is to say if something's not right, or if you don't feel in your producer expertise that this should keep on the record, you need to be able to say why.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you also have to have the humility, as we've talked about throughout the episode, is you've got to be able to accept, okay, this is this artist's vision. And in essence, you win by playing the support role.
Exactly.
You've won a lot along the way by recognizing that ultimately I got to do what best serves the artist. Is that correct?
I totally agree. And, you know, sometimes, you know, that calls for knowing when to have intake. You know, it calls for you knowing what not to say. You know, it calls for you knowing when to step back, let the artist be the artist. You know, of course, there are times when you have to rein it in, you know, but sometimes, you know, as a producer, it may be my job, you know, just to, again, you know, not necessarily just all the way be hands-on in terms of almost micromanaging, you know, let the artist be the artist,
right?
You know, and in that, but I think one of the ways as well to establish that, what I like to do before working with an artist is to establish a relationship. You know, and the way I do that is making sure that we have communication established. You know, even if we don't get to see each other before we get into the studio, you know, there's, at least from some personal point of view, some things that I like to have established with the artist.
Yeah. You create a connection point.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Nice. Well, you're a family man. You're a husband. You're a father.
Yes.
You're a grandfather as well. What would you say is possible in the realm of balance? Is that an unnecessary word if you're in the music industry and you have a family?
Oh, it's necessary.
Okay.
You know, you have to learn that balance. Because I've seen the music industry tear apart families, you know, and even with those individuals unintentionally, you know, because, you know, they were so engulfed in focusing on the career, you know, and if you're not careful, you know, music can overwhelm you, you know, in terms of your time management.
Right.
You know, and then I've seen and I saw myself at one point, you know, having that unbalance where, you know, I'm like, okay, now this music side is about to kind of overtake me, you know, and I'm giving less time to my family, you know, and again, going back to my son, you know, making that statement. So, you know, family number one is, first of all, my first ministry. You know, so I place importance on my family. You know, because, you know, if I don't have my family, and if they don't look to me as the husband, the father, the grandfather, you know, that I should be, you know, then, to me, the musical side is void.
Oh, okay.
You know, because I hadn't done my job here.
Yeah, that's good.
Good. So I think it's very important, and my wife and I, we make sure that every day we pray with each other, even if we're away from each other. Mm-hmm. We make sure that we pray every day, make sure that even if we don't talk to our kids, our sons every day, make sure that they're straight, and we're living for our grandkids. Mm-hmm. Love all 5 of them.
Fantastic.
So to me, family is very important. Mm-hmm. Because without them, to be honest with you, without them, it wouldn't be the Cedric Thompson producer.
Right.
Because they inspire what I do.
Nice. What do you hope your legacy will be?
Number one, outside of the musical aspect, was that I was a person of integrity. That's important to me. That I was a person of great character, not just a person of character. Because when a person of character can have many definitions.
There's a whole lot of characters out here.
There's a whole lot of characters out here. But I want people to always say, that I was somewhere. I was a person that they could respect because of who I was and because of what and who I represented.
Right.
Number one, I love my family. Well, I love God. I love my family. Then up under that, everything else is categorized. So even if they have nothing else to say about me musically, I want them to be able to say that I was someone that they could respect, because of my integrity.
Nice. Nice. Well, your body of work, as we said, already speaks for itself, and I know you've left a tremendous fingerprint on the world with your music. We celebrate your gifts and what you've contributed to the music industry in general. So, where can people find your music? First of all, that you've already created, and tell them where they can find you on social media if they don't know.
Sure. They can find my music on mostly all of the DSPs, and then to if you want to know the particular projects that I've worked on, you can go to All Music. Yeah. And look up Cedric Thompson. Socially, you can find me on Facebook, Cedric Thompson, and Instagram.
Okay. All right. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, man. You have contributed much, as I said, to the world of music. Your stamp is on it forever, and we're honored to have you. And just thank you for what you've shared with the Musically Hits audience today. There was just tons and tons and tons of gems. So we'll have to go back. Make sure when you listen to this episode, you can probably have to go back and make notes and stop and start again, because it was just so much good rich content today. That. So thank you for sharing with us today. We really appreciate you, Cedric.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This has been another episode of Musically Hits. I'm your host, Zack Reynolds. Take care. We'll see you next time. Supporting this podcast is easy. Just hit the subscribe button. See you on the next episode.